Hey everybody, it's time for another episode of the Mysterious Huntsman Podcast. This is Paul and I will be your host tonight and pretty much every night because it's my show. And tonight I'm excited to have Jacob on the show, and he's going to be telling us his incredible account of running into what by all accounts are a Bigfoot while bear hunting. And the great thing about Jacob is he is coming to us anonymous, and he is law enforcement and has a very detailed account. And let's just sit back and welcome Jacob into the show. Hey, Jacob. This is Paul with the Mysterious Huntsman. How are you doing tonight?
Pretty good. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. Man, I just wanted to thank you for coming on the show. And I know you've got an incredible account. And I know it's taken some time for us to get together, but when you reached out to me a while back, I knew that I had to get you back on because your story just gripped me and I couldn't let go of it. And I'm so thankful that you contacted me back.
Yes, sir.
And, I'm not going to just, I don't want to give away too much. I know you are coming to me anonymous. And you have reasons for that. And to me, that gives a little bit more validation that you're not seeking any kind of notoriety or anything in this. But you do have an incredible, very believable account that occurred to you on a hunting trip. And
yes, sir.
I'm just going to stop talking and let you take it away and take it from, where you got started or what happened to you.
Okay. Like you said, the name I'm going to use is Jacob. And the reason why I say that is because I'm a law enforcement officer for the federal government. I have 23 years total, and I am a trainer. I train in hand-to-hand firearms, defensive tactics, room clearing, things of that nature. Prior to that, I was in the United States military and served in Iraq. The story that I have for you is one that actually kind of rattled me somewhat because I'm not one to actually believe in anything unless it's proven to me. As a cop, you have a tendency not to believe stuff unless you have concrete evidence of its existence or it being there. And on the night I'm speaking of, and I apologize for not knowing the date, but I'm going to give the state away. It's the state of Kentucky. The UK Kentucky Wildcats was playing North Carolina that day, and it was the day that Anthony Davis altered a shot that aided Kentucky in winning the basketball game. That's the date that I have for that. The exact date I couldn't tell you about. But during that time frame, it was myself and a friend of mine, childhood friend of mine, had married a girl in Pike County, Kentucky. And where her family resides is on the Kentucky-Virginia line. It's an area called Kelly Mountain Road. Well, I had went with him on a hunting trip. We was hunting black bear. And on that trip, I was carrying with me my 7mm Magnum rifle, and I carried off duty all the time a Heckler & Koch 45 caliber USP pistol. It carries 12 rounds plus one. Well, on that day, we had went the day before, and we went on a trail. Well, we came back the next day, and there was trees laid across the trail. There wasn't any kind of really big storms or anything like that. It was cool, but nothing out of the way. Excuse me. So I had went around a couple. We were driving ATVs, and it finally got to the point to where the trees laying across the pathway leading up this mountain pass that we were hunting, it just got too craggy and it was just too much stuff there, just to say it for what it was. So we had to get off the ATVs and we had to walk. So we're walking up this pass, and we come to an open area, a cleared out area on the side of this one mountain. And up there, there's a lot of coal mining, and there's a lot of gas wells, and things of that nature. And they bulldoze areas in order to make those passes up through there. So what they do is they'll push the topsoil and the rock and everything off in an area to make the roadway or the pathway, and they'll just push it literally off the side of the mountain. Well, we had been walking for probably 2 hours, 3 hours, give or take, and I decided that I was going to sit and watch an area, glass an area, use my binoculars and watch an area and see if I could see anything go through. Well, the pathway went up a good distance more, and it kind of wound around the mountain somewhat to the backside of it, and he decided he wanted to go a little bit further. So I knew where he was going pretty much. He knew where I was, so there's no chance of us shooting each other. Got to be safe. And I sat, not making a sound, not doing anything out of the way or anything like that. He continued on. About 45 minutes later, to my right, I heard what sounded like something walking through the brush and just coming through the foliage. You would hear like one or two steps and a stop. And that's something that I learned in the military. A human being, generally, if you watch a person or if you can hear a person walk, for that matter, people walk in rhythm. They'll take one step after another, after another, after another, because they're trying to get from one place to the other. Whereas an animal, on the other half, unless they're being pushed, they'll walk for a while and they'll stop and they'll listen. And then they'll walk for a little while more and they'll stop. Predators do it, prey does it. And this was going in that pace, so I was thinking, well, maybe it's a deer, it could be a bear. At that time, it wasn't making any god-awful noise like anything of any weight. Any hunter knows if you're out there, a squirrel makes more noise generally than a deer will.
That's right.
It sounds ironic, but it's true. So I'm sitting there, and I'm looking out, and the area that I'm sitting in, there's like a little, I can't really call it a cove. It's kind of like a little cut-in area. And I'm looking out over an area, and there's these boulders that was pushed off, the rock that was pushed off. And it's just really, really, really rough terrain. It's probably at a 38 to 40 degree angle, sloping downhill. And I can still hear it going, but then I start hearing rocks kind of, when you rub two rocks together, if they kind of hit, I'm starting to hear that. So I'm sitting there and I'm waiting, and my attention's trained to that area. And I'm watching, I look away, and when I look back, I see this brownish, dark, it was dark. It wasn't black. It was like a brownish, dark brown color, hairy thing. So I pull my rifle up, real slowly. I'm bringing it around as it's coming out, and it's crawling. It's on all fours. Like I said, the terrain was like probably about a 38 to 40 degree slope downhill. And I'm watching it. And as it's going, I can literally see from the hair on its arms, which was longer than what was on its body, and it was really light up under what you would call an armpit area, wasn't as thick as all. It was pretty light. You could see the muscles bulging, contracting as it's moving, as it's manipulating this way, going over the terrain. So I'm watching it, and I'm thinking, it's a black bear, So I put my rifle on, and when I'm looking, trying to get a good shot, I'm thinking, okay, this probably will be bad, because if it runs downhill, then it's going to be difficult to retrieve it, but I don't want to leave it. And the more I look at it, I keep inspecting it, because something's not right. The movement's not right for a bear. The build of it's not right for a bear. And it just, everything's just playing in my head. I want a good shot. So I'm looking through my scope, and I look up towards the front, and I notice that there's no neck. There's a head. Excuse me. There's a head, but no neck. It's like its shoulders sucked its head into its body. And about that time, I kind of like, what in the, I said something. It wasn't that loud, was not that loud, but I said something to the effect of, what in the blank is that? I said a curse word, And the thing turned and it looked at me. And when it looked at me, it had human-like eyes. It had an ape-like face. It was, I'm 6'3" and like 270 pounds. I'm not a small man. This thing was bigger than me. Its shoulders, I have really broad shoulders. This thing's shoulders was broader than I was. And about that time when I said that, when it looked at me, you know, you could tell it was kind of searching where I was and things like that. And I stand up, I lower my rifle, and the combination of me standing up and the movement of the rifle, as I'm trying to get a good look at it, and it's probably, I'm going to say 70 yards away, give or take, you know. I'm looking at it, and this thing, it like the dog that barked in the background, it sounded like almost like a dog barking, but like a totally primal, just super thick. I don't scare easy, and when this thing barked, kind of it wasn't really a bark. It was like a bark growl, an aggressive vocalization. I guess I could just leave it at that. What it was, it shook me. It shook me. I mean, it scared me, you know, and I don't scare very easily. So the police side of me kicked in. I laid my rifle across my chest, which is a police tactic. If your long gun goes down, you go to your sidearm. Well, 98% of the time when I work with a sidearm, with a pistol.
Right.
So I go inside my coveralls, my hand shoots in real quick, and I pull out and I produce my pistol. And when I shoot from what's called a modified isosceles position, which is kind of like you square up to the target, you lower your body weight ever so slightly, lean a little bit forward, and you hunch forward. And I was ready to take a shot at it. And I'm sitting there, and I've got the sights right on it. I'm literally aiming right around the left shoulder of it. And it sits there, it barks once or twice more, and then you can see the facial expressions. You could actually see kind of sort of the change in the face. It goes from, you know, someone yelling, screaming, and hollering at you for you to get out of there to concern. And the thing that I remember most about it is that its lips formed a perfect circle, and it made a kind of sound like that. And that's not even close to it, but it made a sound almost like a primate. And when it did that, it stood up and it ran across those rocks. And I've never seen a human being run that fast on flat ground. And this thing was covering ground faster than I ever could even think about even replicating. I mean, there's no way. You couldn't take the only way you could go any faster going down that hill is if you went fast and drove off the mountain and just literally just stay up going down. I don't think anything could have, I've never seen anything run that fast on anything like that before, ever. And like I said, I'm 50 years old. I've hunted ever since I can remember. And, you know, white-tailed deer runs fast. I've seen black bear run very fast before. And I can identify both, you know, and I can tell you that night, the thing that I saw was neither.
Now, when you said it formed a perfect circle with its mouth, with its lips, I can't think of anything out there in the woods that can do that, other than like howler monkeys or it's something that's primate-ish. And when it made the sound, I mean, do you think it was letting you know something, or was it calling out to something else, or do you had the feeling it was just him there, or do you think there were more?
I don't honestly know. You know, I mean, because I've seen animals like, say, deer a lot of times. If you spook them, for instance, they'll puff, they'll blow up, they'll blow,
right,
and their tails will pop up and they'll run away. So it lets anything in the area know there's something to be alarmed about in that area and not to come in. And like I said, I mean, I've hunted bear, there's elk there. You have to pull an elk tag for Kentucky in order to hunt there. And my work schedule is so hectic that if I was to pull it and then be able to get away and everything like that, and there's no guarantee of you getting it, I've not pulled an elk tag yet, so I can say that I've never hunted elk. I've hunted bear, I've hunted deer, squirrel, turkey. My gosh, what else? Coyote. You know, and I'm in the woods all the time. I take my kids out there, and that was kind of my second home. But after that, I literally rethought, you know, my stance of going out into the woods. You know, it didn't scare me to the point to where I don't go anymore, but I am 15 times more mindful. It's almost like I'm in Iraq when I'm there, because before I used to always think that man was the most prominent animal in the woods. And after that, I've come to the realization that we ain't it. You know, there is something else there.
Right. And, you know, earlier, I know we were talking about people that have gone missing, and, you know, there's been a lot of hunters that have gone missing. And we were talking about the David Pilates, the Missing 411 books, which he never alludes to what he thinks is going on. Mm-hmm. But I think he's got a good idea, but he just won't ever come forward and say that, because he's former law enforcement as well. And I mean, you know, none of us are going to go on record with anything unless we have cold, hard facts or evidence, you know, on the spot. Yeah. So, what do you think about that?
I can literally see how that could be possible. Like, you know, a lot of hunters get out there, but, you know, and I say this not trying to toot my own horn or anything like that, but I was generally from a very young age the guy that was always quick to go towards the problem or the danger versus going away from it. But like when I said, when that thing first roared at me, it froze me. You know, and I don't freeze. I didn't freeze in Iraq. I didn't freeze on the street when I was a cop. You know, and I'm currently a cop now, and it, you know, things that go bad, if you hear gunshots or anything like that, it doesn't put me, not saying I don't get nervous, but it doesn't freeze me. I react and I go. And it took me probably about maybe 3 seconds to shake that off from I'm afraid I really want to get the heck out of there to me drawing my pistol, you know. And when I did, I came out. And for anyone, if there's any law enforcement out there, anyone who's trained in firearms at all, you only put your trigger finger on the trigger when you're committed to a shot. And when I came out of that holster and I came on target, I can tell you that my trigger finger was exactly on the trigger. I had about yes, sir. I had about a pound of pressure on that trigger already.
Right.
And it wouldn't have took but maybe a few more pounds before I broke the first shot. But I mean, that's where I was at that point. I went from completely relaxed to perplexed about what I was seeing to almost utter fear. You know, it's the only thing I can compare it to. When I was a kid, I went to the circus and I heard a lion roar, and it didn't sound quite like a lion, but the way when a lion roars, you feel it with your body. You not only hear it, you feel it. I mean, you can see it in a cage and know it's in a cage. And if you're not looking and it roars, it will literally just shake you to your core. And that's what this thing did. So I can see people going out there, if they're not used to being in high stressful situations, to where it would completely just freeze them up.
Yeah. And, you know, you've heard everyone ask the question, well, if a hunter is there and he's got his rifle, he's got his finger on the trigger, why didn't they shoot? But, you know, if you hear stories like yours, and other people have told me that there's something about it, you can't pull the trigger. It's either, some people have said it looked too human-like. I was afraid to kill this thing. Or what if it was someone in a suit? Or like you said, it just like a lion's roar, just kind of stopped you. And that could lead something else. I know have you ever heard of this theory of infrasound? It's where, yeah. So, I mean, just for the audience, I mean, infrasound is like a scientifically proven, low level noise, for the lack of a better word, that humans can't really hear, but it's something that lions can do to their prey to stun it, to confuse it, and instill fear where they just completely freeze. I mean, your fight or flight just goes out the window. So,
Right.
And I've heard that before with these accounts like yours, and I think it's incredible. And I was going to ask you, do you think that could have played a role in it, or was your mind just so perplexed by what you were seeing that it just froze you?
I have to say it was the roar, because me seeing it, and the reason why I didn't make the shot, just from the law enforcement perspective of it, I'm sitting there thinking, one, everything I have to do has to be legal.
Right. Right.
Like, for instance, a judge can get a DUI and a judge can still be a judge. However, if a cop gets a DUI, he's going to soon be either a meter maid or a parking lot attendant. And I'm not downplaying any of those jobs, but he can't be a cop anymore.
Right.
So, so from the police side, once that kicked in, you have to go in, as far as, is it a threat? Is it something that I can justify the shoot on? And the thing was so human-like, even though I did see hair, you could smell it. It stunk. Once it got in range, and because, like, say, early in the morning, because we left out, and I want to say it's about maybe 4:30 in the morning. So as it starts to warm up during the day, the higher up you are, you smell. Your sense of smell is just what it is. But as the mountain starts to warm up, the air rises and it brings things up, so scents and smells and things like that. And I can smell it. It didn't smell human. It did not look completely human, but there were some aspects of it that was human-like. So I'm processing in my brain, in the back of my cop brain, I should say anyway, I can't shoot a person for yelling. I can't shoot a person for scaring me. I can't shoot a person for them being there. If it had charged me, yes, I would have shot. There's not a doubt in my head whatsoever. And rather than me being on this podcast, we would have a body and everything would be over and done with.
You'd be the next. You'd be in the book with a missing 411.
Yes, sir. Either I would have killed it there, or it would have came up there and taken the bullets that I put in it, and it would have beat me, I guess. Like I said, I'm 6'3", and if I had to guess, I'm going to say the thing was about 6'6" to about 7 foot. Okay. It was big. It was. I'm around a lot of football players from time to time and things like that, basketball players, and I've seen basketball players about that height, but I've never seen an offensive guard or offensive tackle the size of this thing. And that's even just being light with it. I'm, like I said, I'm about 270 pounds. I will put this thing well over 300, probably closer to 380 to 400 if I had to guess off the top. And that's just a layman's guess with that. But when it roared, screamed, hollered, whatever you'd want to call it, it shook me. Because of me seeing it did not perplex me. It didn't lock me up. My mind was still going, and I was trying to process everything through. You see something. What is it? Okay, it's this, and go on from there. And then once it got to what is it, I hit the big unknown. So I was trying to figure out, is it because like my friend is like 6'2". He's about 250, and he's on the back side. So after everything was over and done with, for instance, I texted him. I had my phone. We had phone service up there, luckily. AT&T is actually pretty good for some things. And I texted him, and I said, where are you? He's like, I'm on the back side. He said, did you fall? And I'm like, no, I'm right here. And he came around, and I'm sitting here, and I just had what in the military is called a 1,000-yard stare. It shook me, And he's like, well, let's go to the next range. And I'm like, I didn't want to say no, but I didn't want to come off like completely crazy either. He had made comments about hearing something scurry around and something coming towards me and everything. But as far as me actually opening up to him to completely what I saw and everything like that, I gave him some stuff, but I didn't give him too much because, I don't want to come off like I've lost my mind or something.
Right.
So, we did talk some, but, it was, everything happened so quick, it was just, I don't know, it's just, everyone always has a plan. Well, as Mike Tyson says, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And at
Right.
that point, their plan falls apart, And you're up there, and I'm pretty sure guys on hunting trips all the time, if I see this, I'm going to do that, and that's great to do, but when it really comes down to it, I'm not one to actually just launch bullets at things because they're moving. I take game for the purpose of hunting. I do it legally, and I'm not one to, just be indiscriminate and haphazard. And, I like to think all my stuff through, because as far as like for my career, for instance, the first time, as well as I do, if a cop does something just because he wants to do it and it's a bad move, it's a career ender, and like I said, right now I'm going on my 23rd year. So, I've been kind of lucky, I guess I could say it more than anything else, because everybody does make mistakes, but I've been lucky enough to make the right decisions at the right time. And that thing right there, I'm telling you, it wasn't human. It couldn't be human, because it's like I said, where we were back up in there was, it borders almost right up to the Virginia-Kentucky border. I mean, it's like you can see from where we were, and there's just nothing, there's no civilization back there. There's no people. There's no running water. There's no nothing back up in there. If a person was to fall back in that area right there, and they didn't bring someone out to actually check a gas well or something like that back in those areas, you'd be there. You would just go missing. You would never be heard from again.
Right. And well, I wanted to ask you, I forget exactly how you worded it earlier, but I'll bypass that. But what did you, after the yell, or after you came back to your senses or watched it scurry off, what were you thinking you had just seen? Did you have a notion or what you thought you might have seen, or did you immediately go to some type of Bigfoot cryptid creature? Or
I was, I guess, you're kind of in denial for a while, because like I say, I'm the one to say that until I see it, I really can't say I believe it. As well as I do being a cop, someone tells you a story, okay, you can kind of hear it and everything like that. But until you can validate their story, at that point, then you can say, okay, this person's telling me the truth, or this person may be lying to me and whatnot like that. I've heard stories about that, about Bigfoots before and things like that. Because like I say, in Kentucky, I live in central Kentucky, and we had commuted to the hunting spot, which is in the far eastern corner. This is the area of the Hatfield and the McCoys,
Yeah.
And we go back up in there, and to say that, on previous trips, we didn't run across a still or a person back up in there moonshining somewhere or something like that. Yes. But, as far as a 6'6" to 7 foot guy in a gorilla suit that has some kind of servo system in there that's going to actually make where the muscles move, be able to be dressed up. And you would literally have to have some kind of computerized something or other, like a robot or a symbot or something, I don't know. Because when the lips made that circle before it made that ooh sound, it was a primate sound. When it did that, you could see the structure of the face move, the eyes itself. The eyes itself was the main thing that I can say that almost looked like human. And when I say almost, like I said, 70 yards away, you can't really tell a human, as far as everything, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
But from that distance, you can see, if there's a muscle bulge and then you see the bulge go from bulging to relaxed back to bulging again, you see that, even at that distance, it was very well muscled, And after that, I've sat and I've thought, and I was like, well, maybe I didn't see it. Maybe maybe I didn't get enough sleep. We got up early in the morning and went out and everything like that. And I played everything through in my head. And I started to watch a few of the more credible, Bigfoot stories and things like that. Because at the time I'm thinking, is this a Bigfoot? Is it? Can it be? And that was in the back of my head, but I'm like, they don't exist. It's just crazy. Who is it? What is this? Things like that. But the way that this thing, it was on all fours, it was walking with its feet and its hands, in a prone position, going over the rocks. It was crawling down, and it was making a low profile. I believe it was what we called it in the military, so that it didn't silhouette itself towards anything,
Sure.
So you kind of, you want to creep in and creep out if you're trying to get away from something. And I honestly believe that when my friend went around on the backside of that mountain, I believe he pushed it my direction, which, for whatever reason under the sun, I don't know why he didn't. I guess the thing saw him before he saw it or something. But he did make comments about smelling something bad, and it smelled like it stunk. It smelled like, I'm not going to say death, like say something that's been dead for a while, but it had an extremely unpleasant odor about it, but the hair wasn't matted. The hair was hanging. The hair underneath the arms hung longer and was longer than the hair on top of it. And the hair on the body was a little bit less dense, is not the word. It was shorter. And around where a human's armpit would be, there was hair there, but there wasn't much. There was some hair on the face. It wasn't completely covered. It didn't look like a wolf man or anything like that, like you see on the movies or anything like that. And it had no neck. The head looked like, it was kind of like if you cut the neck off completely and just shoved the head onto the body. So when it moved, like I said, when it was crawling, and when I said what I said and it turned towards me, it had to literally, kind of shift its shoulders. So the one shoulder, its right shoulder dropped down and it's lifted its left shoulder up to look at me. And it was kind of a really quick, kind of like almost like an aggressive type of flip of the shoulder. And it was scanning, looking for me, And as soon as it made contact with me, as soon as it saw me, then it didn't hesitate to let me know that I was not welcome there, And that's when it barked, and when it did that, then it all just ran pretty quick after that. I drew my pistol, like I said, I leveled down and was prepared to fire. I was not in a holstered position. And, afterwards I thought about it. It was kind of, because everything plays through your head after the fact, I've had officers that was involved in shootings, and then afterwards they would question how they did something, why they did something, their technique on how they did it, and things like that. And one thing that I teach a lot of is, like, you see a lot of officers, they'll either shoot with either a rifle or a shotgun. And if for whatever reason, if that shotgun or that rifle becomes unserviceable for any reason, runs out of ammo or anything like that during a firefight, if you have a sling, then you would sling the weapon. Well, that rifle, where I was seated, was sitting in my lap. The sling was hanging below my knees, in front of my legs. So when it did that, the idea of me aiming that rifle at that thing anymore went out the window. I immediately took that rifle with the muzzle side pointing, and I pulled it across my chest. And you hold it into your chest as tightly as you can. And you go for your sidearm, and from that point, you would return fire, or you would cover or do whatever.
Sure.
And that's exactly what I did, So, but my stance, because I was standing up, just kind of a, what in the heck is this? And I didn't say heck, but I'm not going to curse on, your show off. So, but anyway, I went from a what in the heck is this, a perplexed look about me, stance about me, and everything like that. And when it barked, when it vocalized at me as loudly as it did, and I could feel it, it shook me right to my core when it did it. That, after I was able to shake that off, I retrieved my sidearm, and I went into prepared to go into a shooting position. I was ready for a fight at that point. And the very second I did that, you've seen the facial expression move, change, you've seen everything just kind of alter up. And it let out this, it was just a sound. It was it was not the same sound. It wasn't anything intimidating or anything like that, but it let it out I honestly believe, to let anything else in the area know that there is something that is either aggressive or something that they should steer clear of. And the thing stood up. It popped up like it wasn't anything else. Popped up like it was anything at all, and it took off down that hillside running just as fast as it could go, and it was way faster than anything that I don't know. For police work, if you run radar, and this is just a little tidbit I'm giving away, you have to visually observe a car speeding first in the state of Kentucky, for instance, before you can validate it with radar. So part of the testing for that is that you will watch cars coming up and down the roadway, and there's someone with a radar gun, and you will write down, like you might do 20 cars, and like say car number one, they call out a blue Saturn or something like that, and you would write down the speed of it that you would guesstimate it to be. And then they would shoot it with radar, and then they would write down the speeds, and when you're done with it, they would match up where you are. And if you're within 5 miles per hour of the guesstimated speed compared to the radar speed of it, then you got one right,
Yeah.
And not bragging, but I was pretty good at that. Wasn't the best traffic cop because I really don't like traffic tickets, but
I was the same way. Same.
Yeah. But it's part of the job,
Right.
And if I had to guess the speed for that thing, I'm going to say 35 to 40 miles an hour easy, which for an animal isn't that much. It's impossible for a human. And I know this, but for the terrain that thing was running on, I mean, if you could probably walk a mule or a donkey who are normally more sure-footed than a horse. You could walk them up or down there. But if you even so much try to run it, take them at a trotting pace, you would break their legs and kill them. And this thing went down there like it went downhill at kind of a diagonal angle, like it wasn't anything at all.
Wow. Well, did you ever, after this was over and you got it with your friend and you guys headed out, did you ever tell him what you saw?
I did. Well, I told him some. I didn't say a lot. Like I said, it's kind of one of the things, I don't want him to think that I lost my mind or anything like that. But we went further in, and, the sounds in the woods are funny because, I'm sitting on this. He had texted me, like, before that, like, he thought that he had jumped something, prior to me actually hearing anything because he heard something, and that was about it. And then he was like, "Have you seen anything?" And I'm like, "No." And I'm, I'd look on my phone a little bit, and I'm watching this area and everything before I had my encounter. Well, we were in there, and you can hear like chirps and the occasional whistle, and it's really odd for me to say that because anybody in the woods, animals make some noises that people don't know. It's like, say, for instance, there was an instance one time years ago in the spot that I was hunting. It sounded like a baby crying, and I was like, that makes not really, doesn't make a lot of sense. I hunted enough to actually, and I talked to some older guys, and they said that a wildcat will sometimes make that kind of sound for whatever reason, I don't know. So, you kind of have to really be on your P's and Q's. If you hunt, you look at what's called sport, for instance, when I hunt. Rather than just walking a trail until I get to an area and stop, I'll actually look, and I'll watch areas. I'll look down on the ground for any evidence of, like, say, a leaf. Like, say, if it rained like the day before, but it's been windy that day, I'll look for a leaf that is wet on the top side, and which tells me that something dislodged that leaf and pulled it over, because a wet leaf generally sticks to the ground, for instance. If it's in a rocky area. If it's a muddy area, I look for, some type of prints. I look for, like, say, an area where, like, say, something muddy was wiped off on either a tree root, that's an exposed tree root, or a down tree or a rock or something like that, like when it's climbing over the transfer,
Right.
And going back to my cop days, it's called the rules of evidence. It says you always pick up something and you always leave something behind, in an area. So, all that is going into when I hunt. All that stuff goes into my hunting prowess. And it's just, anyway, long story short, we went to another area, and there were some trees in an area that were partially down. And when I say that, I'm talking about the tops were broken off in an area, but the area that was broken off on them wasn't close to the ground, because a tree rots at the baseline and then they fall over. And these were probably 9 foot in the air, 10 foot in the air, maybe. Like the tops are broken and they're leaned over, but they're still attached to the tree, Mm-hmm. And any other time, I would have never thought much of it, but I kept thinking, something's not quite right with this. Something's not right. In the area of Kentucky, it's up in the mountains. There are snowstorms that come through and things like that. But the more I researched it, there are things called snow load, where the snow gets so heavy that it'll break the trees off at a certain level and stuff like that. But when you get snow load, you get that in an area. It won't be 1 or 2 trees. It'll be several trees in a patch or something like that, something that's capable of holding that much snow until they finally fail, And for this area, there would be like a tree here or there. And, going further up, we didn't go much further on that one. We came out of that one and went into another pass. And then he was wanting to go kind of in the area where that thing had went. And in all honesty, I had no desire for it whatsoever. I straight put us on a different path. We went in the opposite direction. We came down off that mountain and went up on another one where it was further back. And that's why I'd seen that stuff. But as far as seeing anything else at all, no, sir. But there were chirps and whistles that we heard. And in the woods, it's not uncommon to hear that, because you always think of birds, But in that area, for instance, the bird species up there, you have a few robins that hang around in the wintertime, and there's starlings and things like that are there. But the finches and all that, but none of them made the sounds that I heard. And I kept telling them, that something's not right and everything. And he had divulged that he felt odd himself. Something just wasn't quite right. We hunt out there. He hunted at the time. I think he had like a 270 Winchester, which is more than capable of taking down a black bear, which for the state of Kentucky is the biggest wild animal that you would encounter. The bull elk would be next, and then it goes down from there. There are some mountain lion here, but it's more than capable of taking it down. I hunt with a 7mm Remington Magnum, which is more lion, African lion, and things like that. Black bear, it's right on the lower end of hunting grizzly with. So as far as armament's concerned, 2 capable men of size and stature, you wouldn't think that you would just kind of shake it off and go on. But, we both knew that something was going on. And as far as discussing with him about it, I did divulge some. He said he believed me on that, but he's like, I didn't see anything. He said, I heard something and I smelled something, but I don't, that's it. And I just kind of shrugged my shoulders about it, and I never said a word. And I sat on it for years, I just got to the point where I realized I wasn't crazy. But, it's not something that you can come out and say, I saw a Bigfoot. But, I would say right now, behind the cover of this right here, that's exactly what I saw.
Wow, it's incredible. And,
yes, sir.
Man, and I appreciate you coming forward. It's brave of you to, to have, the job and the status that you have, and then come on here and tell me your story. And but I knew I had to get you back on here, because ever since the day we talked, I kept thinking over and over and over again, I got to have your story on here. I don't want to. Well, it's just, there's some people that, I'm trying to figure out how to say this, but I have a lot that tells me their story, and I believe them. But
yes, sir.
When you have trained observers, that they're trained to observe, and they're, military, law enforcement, airline pilots. Professional people that have a lot to lose, when they come on and tell their story, to me that lends way more credibility. And
yes,
that's what I'm looking for on on this show. It's just, I wanted to create this place as a platform and a safe place for people to come on and tell their story without fear of judgment or ridicule. And I just thank you. And I didn't say it before, but I do appreciate your service to the country also. And I know how law enforcement is as well, and it's even tougher now. And I'm no longer in there, but I really appreciate what you do. And
yes, sir.
Where are you now as far as I know you said you kind of got hooked and you're looking into things, you're researching, you're listening more, and what's your thought processes now on this whole phenomenon?
Hang on one second. Real quick. Hey, you gonna go lunch? Yeah. It should be fine. All right, thanks. Okay, I apologize. I'm back.
Oh, that's okay.
All right. I kind of lost. What did you say again? I'm sorry.
Well, no, I was just wondering, where are you at now in your thought processes? I mean, it kind of hooked you, didn't it, to look into this deeper and want to investigate this phenomenon more, didn't it?
It does. It did. I've got small kids, and I would always take them out with me in the woods all the time. And anyone who knows me knows that I generally spend a lot of time with my kids. And so we'd be out fishing or hunting and, things like that out in the woods. And I'd let them run around to a point. I would watch them, keep an eye on them. But it got to the point to where I don't take them in certain areas with me anymore. Now, my oldest kid, I can take more. But I literally went to the point now that when I go, if I'm not hunting and things of that nature, I take, and I hate to say it, but I do, I carry an AR-15 rifle with me now, and I go out in areas and I look for, and I'm not saying I'm looking for Bigfoot signs predominantly or anything like that, but my mind is completely open now, and it's not that I'm out there trying to hunt anything, but I'm not wanting to be hunted either.
Right.
And I'll go out and I'll look for signs of things, like say if it's a new hunting area or something like that. And there's been a couple of times that we've went back out there and you can hear, what sounds like monkeys in the distance, and it's like, like when you're in an area sometimes or someone shows you a picture and you look at it and then you go on. And then someone explains to you, well, okay, in this picture here, there is a ghost, or there's a good-looking lady wearing a blue dress or something like that. And then when you look at it this time, you see it, and then from then on, when they show you pictures, or if you're in a situation like that, you would generally look deeper, where it's just kind of like scanning it and go on.
Right.
I actually paid more attention. And there's been a few areas that I've seen, like the tree breaks, and, heard a wood knock once, and just one knock, boom, and it's before, you would hear something like that and completely dismiss it because, it's just one noise. It's nothing until you really start to sit down and think, it's 2:00 in the morning, I'm coming out of the woods and, there's not a single bit of ambient light. There's no light whatsoever. And there are, there's something up there that's capable of swinging a club-like item and striking it on another piece of wood. And I'm like, I don't see, at that point, it kind of opens your eyes to it. I'm a lot more vigilant. And unfortunately, I'm not really logging a lot of the stuff down. I'm just more like doing it, I guess, trying to run across something else or something like that and see how it goes from there. But yeah, I mean, for anyone who tells you that there isn't, all I can say is they just haven't seen yet. It's eye-opening.
Well, yeah, I'm with you. I've heard a few tree knocks, and I heard one recently back home where I'm from, South Alabama, and I have no clue what causes that. I grew up in the woods also, and there's nothing out there that I can think of or know of that makes those sounds. You have to have opposable thumb, or you have to be able to grab something, swing it, and it sounds like two Louisville Sluggers bats hitting each other. And
right.
It's I really wish I could figure out what that is. And I don't know. I may have to come up there and let you take me into that area sometime if you ever go back up there.
I'd love to. I would absolutely love to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting to the point where, I'm hearing a lot of these accounts, and I hate to say it, but I want my own sighting. I'm one of those. I want to see it to believe it.
Yeah.
And people say, be careful what you ask for. And
that's true.
But I mean, for me, I mean, I've just always had that inquisitive mind, and I can't shake it. And it may upset my world, but I just have to know. On lots of different things. I just want to know. I want to see for myself. So I may have to make it up there one day and let you just take me out. I'd love to. So
yeah, I mean it's different, and it is. I totally get where you're coming from, because I'm one of those you have to prove it to me before I actually believe a lot. So I mean, anyone who doubts any of this right here, I'm totally fine with it, But I can tell you, it's not something that you sit there and you think about and say, I didn't wake up one day and say, you know what, I want to make up a story and hatch it out and everything and just go with it. That's not where I'm coming from with this. It literally, it's humbling, because what you think you know isn't what you know, and I can say all my time in the woods, I've seen one mountain lion, and I've been in the woods before, and for anyone that says that there's not a Bigfoot, and that was always my line, was that you never find a body. If one dies, no one ever runs across it. But, unless a mountain lion, for instance, gets struck by a car, you don't find a mountain lion body laying anywhere.
That's right.
You don't. And I don't. It's humbling, the more I think about it, because I mean, even right now, just talking about it, it still kind of jumbles me a little bit, and it's been years ago, but when it comes to the ability to get out there and see something that you thought never existed before, and I didn't really dismiss people's stories when I've heard them, because as a kid growing up, I used to watch In Search Of, and they would talk about Bigfoot and abominable snowmen and things like that. And I would be like, if I seen one, I would do this, I would do that, and everything. And then you get older, and it's like, nothing to it, And then I was in my 40s, I want to say, when I seen it, and it's humbling, because it's kind of like everything that you thought you knew, you didn't.
Yeah. Wow. Well, man, great story. I just, I'm going to have to come up there. That's all I can say. When we end the show, I want to stay on the line and just kind of maybe get some more information from you. And just, I am coming up to that area, and I guess it's okay to talk about it. I'm going to be coming near the Red River Gorge area.
Okay.
In a couple of weeks to check on something actually up there along these lines, and I'll tell you more about that later. But I will be in the area, and I'm going to start focusing this year on getting out, doing more of my own research and my own investigations, because, like I said, I've heard everyone else having encounters, and I may be an idiot for asking for it, but I want my own encounter. And what's that?
If there's anything that I'm going to make a suggestion, if you were to do that, and I'm not saying it because I'm not that guy that, is waiting for the second coming or Civil War or anything like that.
Right.
But I'm going to be completely honest with you. Bring something other than just a stick.
Right. I got you.
Yeah. I mean, I'm telling you, because it was, I mean, there's physically, I study, several different martial arts and everything like that. There's not a doubt in my mind physically, there wasn't a single thing I could have done against that thing.
Right.
I mean, thank God for black powder and lead, but other than that, man, I mean, I could have been on the menu. I'm not saying that they do anything like that, but I am saying that if that thing wanted to beat me and drag me into a cave somewhere or something like that, I would have been beaten and dragged into a cave, and there'd been nothing I could have done to stop it.
Well, yeah, and
it
there's
moved too fast, it was too strong,
no
way.
Well, yeah, and there's definitely no shame in saying that or thinking that. I mean, that's across the board. Every account, close encounter account that I've heard, everyone says the same thing. You're just going to be on its plate, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Well, Jacob, man, thank you for such an interesting account, and again, thank you for your service. And please feel free to come back on anytime if you have any more encounters, or if you hear of anything you want to talk about. You've got my information, and please feel free to contact me.
Yes, sir. Definitely. And I just want to say thank you. It's one thing to actually have something like that, and I'm not one to really talk a whole lot anyway. However, something like this right here, a story like it, you kind of, an interesting story, if it's something you think that's beneficial or something like it, ordinarily I'd be like, it would be in the best interest to actually come out and say it. But under the circumstances, no, it's not. Now, the ability to actually just to tell somebody, the first time I told you, when I got off the phone with you, I literally took a deep breath and blew out, and it just felt like weight just fell off my shoulders. It was like, okay, I've actually told somebody in detail what happened. Because like the friend that I went up there with, he didn't ask many questions, and I didn't answer very many questions that he did ask. It was like, I don't want this guy to think that I'm nuts or something, But yeah, there's more out there than you think. There's a lot more out there than you think.
Oh, I believe you. I believe you, man. Well, thank you. And like I said, feel free to call me back anytime. I mean, you've got my number, and just, and especially in your current line, stay safe out there, man.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, you have a good one, and we will talk soon.
Yes, sir.
All right. Bye-bye now.
All right. Bye-bye.
And that'll just about do it on this episode of Mysterious Huntsman. Thanks again to Jacob for coming forward and telling us his story. And remember, guys, I'd love to have you on the show. So you can reach me at mysteriousHuntsman@gmail.com. Find me on Facebook, Instagram. MysteriousHuntsman.com is my website. And any story that you have that you don't want to share on air, still contact me. I would love to talk to you about it. And I will keep everyone anonymous that wants to remain anonymous. And with that said, I'm going to get out of here and stay tuned for the next episode. Later.